Hello, and thank you so much for joining me on Climate Check. I'm your host, Mary Mwiikisa. Now today we're coming to you from the Radisson Blu Hotel right in the Moso-Tunya National Park in Livingstone, the tourist capital. And we are here to cover the Accelerating Nature-Based Solutions Conference. And like the title is simply already explaining itself, we are looking for solutions to address the effects of climate change. And so I'll be speaking with various stakeholders who are inputting into proposed solutions to address food insecurity and, of course, the drought that has affected our country, and many other speakers that will give us more information around climate action. Do join me on the other side.
Imagine visiting a place and finding no greenery or vegetation. And because of this, these places remain inhabitable because the land holds no water to run through and no life as we know it to keep going. Imagine a world where the sun doesn't shine, it burns. It scorches everything it touches. There is no sense of cool at night, the balance of the air is polluted, all because you were unable to plant a tree. Join Zanako as we plant 1 million trees to build the future we want to see. A sustainable and green-filled tomorrow. Plant a tree, save our future.
Give us a brief overview of why we're meeting here in Livingstone.
Certainly. So this meeting is trying to overcome a lot of the barriers that we've seen. We've all been grappling with working in the environmental and development space for some decades now in scaling up really effective livelihoods development and land restoration approaches. There are lots of tried and proven effective approaches that can support small-scale farmers and pastoralists to develop much more productive and resilient livelihoods, particularly with locally adapted approaches to agroforestry. But on the most part, the efforts to support these practices have been very fragmented and isolated. Often the support comes from grant-funded programs, and they're always looking for something new and innovative and discreet. So we get this scattergun approach of small-scale pilots of support all over the developing world. And very few of those are working at a large enough scale to actually have a long-term sustainable impact. Really, to have a sustainable impact, you need to be working with markets and incentives from local value chains with communities, and small projects just can't achieve that. So we're looking to build on some fantastic recent methodologies that have been developed that are investable, with support from the private sector and from some grant makers to design really massive scale collaborative programs that can support millions of small scale farmers and pastoralists to adopt practices in a way where they're incentivized from local markets and have a better, more equitable role in local value chains. So this conference is all about delivering those outcomes. It's not a normal conference where people just talk about their experiences and talk about the problems. This is a working event. So there will be a lot of learning, a lot of talking, but there are also a lot of workshops planned, a lot of negotiations and real actions being developed. There are actually a lot of really good opportunities that are in various stages of development, and we've got all of the stakeholders here in Livingstone, Zambia, to progress those opportunities in a really meaningful way, to plan together, to innovate, and to develop concrete plans for action at massive scales. So as the Global Evergreening Alliance, we were created by a lot of the largest development NGOs and environmental NGOs around the world to facilitate these sorts of large-scale collaborative approaches. So in recent years we've developed a program in Africa called Restore Africa, which is the biggest farmer-led land restoration effort ever undertaken in Africa, supporting 1.5 million households across 6 countries, including Zambia, to restore more than 1.8 million hectares of land. Now, the most important thing about this program is it's been developed over years with communities, with stakeholders, with governments and with investors to develop an investable, community-led approach. So these are programs at massive scales working with individual small-scale farmers to adopt the practices that they want that increase the productivity, the reliability and the resilience of their farming systems, but supported by private sector investment.
This conference could have happened at a better time, especially as a country, Zambia. We have our president declaring the drought that we're experiencing a disaster and an emergency. Beyond the conference, I know there will be commitments. How will you ensure that these commitments are actualized? Because help is needed now in countries like Zambia and many others in Africa.
So, speaking from the perspective of my organisation, the Global Evergreening Alliance, we are an action alliance. Our role is to facilitate the development and implementation of massive scale programs with all stakeholders. So we're a convener, bringing everybody together. And we already have a number of investors that are quite well progressed in committing to large-scale investments in Zambia to support hundreds of thousands of small-scale farmers and pastoralists to develop more sustainable livelihoods and to restore degraded agricultural landscapes. So this conference is going to be used to progress and accelerate those existing activities, to move those opportunities to the point of concrete commitments that we're going to see starting to be implemented in the coming 12 months.
And lastly, at the end of this conference, what are some of the boxes you hope to tick?
So by the end of the conference, we need to be able to deliver significant commitments. On the final day, Friday, which is results day for this conference, it's going to be all about showcasing the outcomes of the conference, what has been achieved, what's been planned, what's been committed to. And one of the more interesting aspects of the conference is we're bringing together the Great Green Wall Initiative with the AFR 100, with 1T.org, IUCN, FAO, a whole range of global programming and political stakeholders to look at much more intentional harmonisation of their programs that they're designing and implementing. So we're trying to move away from this fragmented approach of isolated projects and instead to be strategically planning together across landscapes in ways that provide co-benefits to all stakeholders, and particularly farmer-led initiatives where it's the communities that are determining the sort of support they want, the practices that they want assistance in adopting, and we can provide that assistance at massive scale.
Is there anything else you'd like to emphasize or you'd like to add?
Only that to have the sort of impact that needs to be seen in Zambia, across Africa and around the world to avert the impending climate catastrophe that we all know is coming, and to avoid the impacts that we're already seeing from climate change, such as the current drought in Zambia, we have to work together. These efforts can only be undertaken with real collaboration and the commitment of all stakeholders. So I just appeal to everybody to join these efforts. It's an open invitation to come and work with us, to join us, to be part of the change, to be part of the effort to accelerate nature-based solutions and support communities on the ground.
The conference is very important for our organization, but also for the country at large, largely because of the issues that we are experiencing around climate change and also the recently declared national emergency and disaster. So this conference comes at an opportune time as it enables us to discuss solutions that we could use in terms of how we could overcome some challenges which are being exacerbated by climate change, largely due to human activities. And that's why this conference is very important to us as an institution, looking at the work that we do in the conservation sector.
What are some of the opportunities you think may be at this conference in line with finding solutions to the issues that we're facing as a country in line with climate change?
So some of the solutions that we'll be looking at, for instance, as an institution as WWF, we are looking at supporting the government in terms of identifying areas where the restoration work will be undertaken in line with the commitment of the 5,000 hectareage that we have committed as a country to the Afro 100. So in so doing, we just don't need to do afforestation activities everywhere, but we need to look at which areas are more critical for us to be able to restore and contribute to that. And most importantly, just apart from doing the assessments, we also support them with developing an implementation plan in terms of financing that as an institution. Yeah.
And of course, how do you work with communities? Because I believe even as we talk of land restoration, most of this land belongs to the communities. And then how do you work with them to actualize this?
So the communities are at the center of all our activities and programming, largely because they're on the recipient end of the climate action, and also they are the champions and stewards of all the interventions that will be couching as well as implementing. So how we work with them is that we are supporting close to over 2,000 farmers in various chiefdoms where we are working mainly in southern and western province for this intervention, and we're ensuring that we support them with agroecology practices, but also looking at how we can support them with mini irrigation schemes, and also diversification away from maize, but also looking at drought resistance varieties such as sorghum and millet in order to build resilient as well as secure livelihoods at household level. Yeah.
How can that be rolled out nationwide? Because I know that as an organization you have the Food Systems Project, which is really pushing these types of farming methods that could withstand what we're going through now. Could you imagine what could have happened if countrywide we had this knowledge? Some of the crop that we lost would still be standing.
I agree with you that we need to roll it out countrywide, but also just to acknowledge that there are also other players in the space who are also doing that, including government itself. But key where we need concerted efforts is around shifting mindset, because as Zambians we believe that when we are saying we are planting, it has to be maize. So how do we look at crops that are more drought prone as well as which can withstand and be able to resist, such as sorghum and millet as well as cassava. So it's about really changing our own behaviors as a nation. That's where we need to put more focus and resources in as well. Yeah.
What are your last words as we end the interview?
My last words is just to congratulate government for putting up such a brilliant conference, which comes at an opportune time where we're able to discuss issues of nature-based solutions, more especially looking at the humanitarian crisis that we are facing as a country, as we know that nature-based solutions are supposed to be the solutions that we need to adopt, as well as which will help us deal with climate change.
Those are some of the speakers on today's episode. We'll take a short break. On the other side, we'll hear from our last set of speakers.
Imagine visiting a place and finding no greenery or vegetation. And because of this, these places remain inhabitable because the land holds no water to run through and no life as we know it to keep going. Imagine a world where the sun doesn't shine, it burns. It scorches everything it touches. There is no sense of cool at night. The balance of the air is polluted, all because you were unable to plant a tree. Join Zanako as we plant 1 million trees to build the future we want to see. A sustainable and green-filled tomorrow. Plant a tree. Save our future.
As you have heard in the conference, one of the issues that Minister Sikumba brought about was the issue of involving communities. So we look at what kind of leadership is required for the solutions that we want to have. So put differently, in the next 20, 30 or 50 years, if we had reclaimed the climate, if we had restored the climate, how would that look like? Now, in order to get to that, we need a different kind of leadership. We need a leadership that is standing in 50 years or 100 years. We want to ask ourselves, what will we have done to have reclaimed the climate, to have restored the climate? What is it that needs to be done? And of course, we don't want to stand in the clouds. We want to come back and really begin to generate solutions that get to where we are going. We do not want to generate the solutions from where we are, because where we are, there are a lot of challenges. You have drought, for example, in Zambia. You can't resolve it today and tomorrow. But certainly we can be able to say, what could we do if we were to deal with the issue of drought? If we were to eliminate it even, how would that look like? What would we need to do in order to do that? So it may need massive planting of trees. It may need massive restoration of water catchment areas. So if we don't have leaders who are thinking in that way, then we are really missing out. Yes.
How can our leaders leverage on knowledge to ensure that even as we are pushing for funding to go towards climate action, we are fighting to ensure that we receive a fair share for adaptation? but then a leadership that also understands the dynamics that go into sourcing for this funding. How can leaders learn how to achieve this? Because wanting your funding is one thing, knowing how to go about it is another.
So one of the very interesting things the Minister of Tourism spoke about was that he doesn't even understand what the issue of carbon sequestration is. That is really important, because it means that if we are talking over the policymakers, can you imagine what is happening to people who control 33% of the land, like the traditional community, the traditional leaders? That means we are really not connecting the dots. So the first thing is that we really need to ensure that we have the right people at the table. We have women at the table. We have communities at the table. They may not speak eloquent English like we speak, but getting the communities on the table, getting the women on the table is part of the solution of ensuring that the communities are engaged. And one of the ways of doing that is also ensuring that if you look, for example, within this conversation, you'll find that generally the average age might be about 60, the older people. Where are the younger people? We have the youngest continent in the world. We need to be having the younger people, even if the younger people are sitting at the back of the room, because they are really the ones who are going to do this, the work that we are talking about. The older generation who have made a massive contribution, they're really experts in this, but we need to start bringing up the young people, because it is them who are going to be affected by issues of climate change. Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, one thing I would like to add is that the Zambian people, the African people are very spiritual people. I think one of the most important things is really to involve the communities of faith in the conversation that we are having. It is great to start with a prayer, but the prayer is not the only thing that is needed. We need to engage. Can you imagine if the United Church of Zambia, for example, asks every congregant to plant a tree? That's already 3 million trees planted in one go. So I think that we are missing some of the pieces that are really critical in really having this conversation move forward.
For us as faith-based community, we believe that the community of faith is very important when it comes to finding solutions to the climate situations that we find ourselves in. Mind you that the faith-based community is a large community. For example, here in Zambia, where the majority or 90% of our citizens profess to be Christians, that shows that we have a potential to reach out to so many people within the country. But also in the global world, you find that there are so many Christians, so many Buddhists, so many Muslims, and all these affiliate themselves with one faith or the other. And thus it is important to harness the potential that is within faith communities. These communities do not even need resources to reach them, because they are already gathered in their churches, they are gathered in the mosques and wherever they are. And so we believe that coming here is a platform for us to engage with people from different communities, partner with them, as well as have an impact in the communities where people live and where people are found.
And how important to have this approach, the faith-based approach, when addressing climate change, especially here in Africa?
One scholar, John Mbiti, said that Africans are religiously notorious. It simply means that for us Africans, everything we do is about religion. From eating, from birth, dying, all that we do is basically religion. And so faith comes with a moral imperative where people believe. For example, me, a pastor, if I stand in church and say, tomorrow, Saturday, we are going to plant trees, I can imagine how many people will hear my voice. For example, if my own church, the United Church of Zambia, which boasts of having about 3 million members, imagine if the 3 million members could plant each a tree. I think that would be significant. And faith leaders have that power in which people listen to them. When they speak, people listen. When they speak, people do what they say. So we believe that it is important for faith communities to come on board and begin to speak to these issues and begin to propel communities and invite communities to initiatives that will be able to restore the earth to how God intended it to be.
And lastly, what's your word to the Christian community in Africa?
My word to the Christian community in Africa is we need to come on board. We have the numbers, we have the resources. So we need to come on board and use the very scriptures to invite our people to become earth stewards. The Bible talks about how we are supposed to be stewards of the earth. And so let us invite our congregants, our members in our churches to be stewards of the earth. And together we can restore the earth to how God intended it to be.
This is the end of today's episode of Climate Check. We're coming to you from Livingstone's Radisson Hotel. And of course, this is where a conference focusing on accelerating nature-based solutions is happening. And of course, we heard from various stakeholders around offering solutions to address climate change, in particular, helping small-scale farmers cope with the effects of climate change, such as drought that we're experiencing in Zambia. I'm Mary Mwiikisa. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.